everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name's Ben Jackson, I'll be your host, and once again I am joined by Scott and Joris. How are you guys doing this evening?
Hey guys, hello everybody. I don't know about you guys, but I felt that the opening match day weekend was slightly underwhelming, which might have something to do with the fact that, as we highlighted on our big bumper pre-season preview, there's a lot of sides chasing their tail, not quite up to speed yet, and we saw a few performances from sides this opening weekend that were pretty below par, including from a couple of the big boys.
I can only second that, and we'll get into that really quickly now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like the weather in this country at the moment, isn't it? In the UK, just a bit flat and grey and horrible. But there was still drama, and there's still plenty of us to get into from Matchday 1. We'll just quickly run through the results, then we'll dive into each of the games individually. Union got things off to a good start for them. They beat Anderlecht 2-0 in the Brussels derby on Friday night. Eupen drew 2-2 to Westerlo in a ridiculously stupid game. Charleroi drew 1-1 in front of absolutely nobody with OH Leuven. Molenbeek, they announced themselves back in the Pro League with a 4-0 defeat to Genk at home. Antwerp, they got their title race off to a good start with a 1-0 win over Cercle Bruges. Ghent, they beat Kortrijk 3-2. Club Brugge drew 1-1 in controversial fashion with Mechelen. And then Sint-Truiden under Torsten Fink got themselves off to a great start with a 1-0 win at home to Standard Liège. So to the Brussels derby to begin our kind of review of Matchday 1. Obviously, Union without a couple of key players, and Teddy Tuma, he's moved on. No Victor Boniface. So Cameron Puertas came in. Rasmussen got a first start. Charles Van Hout. Alexander Blessen, obviously, in the dugout as well. He stuck Dennis Eckhart up front, and it was Dennis Eckhart who got the first goal of the season. Quite kind of like agricultural, I guess they used to call it. AFC Wimbledon style. The long ball from the back all the way to the front. Ball into space down the left-hand side for Loic Lapoussin, always a winning runner. He takes first touch and sends it across to Dennis Eckhart, who volleys it past Dupé to make it 1-0. And they had plenty of chances, to be fair, Union, to increase the lead, but that didn't come until the very, very end of the game, where Vertonghen was adjudged to have handled the ball in the box. Seemed quite harsh, in my opinion, to penalise him for that. It kind of like his hand was back, and at first I thought it just hit him on the back. It seemed a little bit harsh. Cameron Puertas stepped up to get his first goal of the season, and I'm going to put my neck on the line and say I think it's going to be the first of many for Cameron Puertas this year. He is definitely one of my players to watch. Scott, before I go to you, a couple of kind of takeaways from this that I'm sure you're definitely going to get into about Anderlecht just not looking ready. They're one of those sides that you said just didn't look ready, and bit concerned about Dupé in goal, especially from crosses. It seemed like he'd never seen one in his life and just didn't know what to do with them. I guess, Scott, over to you, kind of thoughts on the Blessing era at the Joseph Marion and kind of what you saw from a disappointing Anderlecht side.
Well, we've been talking a lot, haven't we, recently about sides that are ready and sides that are not ready. And this game is a great one to start with, not just because it was the first game of the weekend, but it typifies that very point. I think we saw a side who are kind of ready and did look pretty much up to speed. I'm sure they'll bring some more faces in Union and continue to improve. But I thought they didn't look bad at all. Union actually released some quite nice footage on their social media this week of the dressing room before the game and the pre-match team talk. And as you can imagine, knowing Alexander Blessing the way everyone knows him, he's always very good at addressing players and kind of getting across a message that players respond to early. So go and have a look at that. That was really nice. But yeah, Union looking pretty decent, I thought. Controlled the majority of this game, were worthy of the win. Took them a little while to kind of finish it, of course. I did actually think it was a penalty, to be honest. It's one of those that's kind of, from an Anderlecht perspective, very frustrating, obviously, but I did think it was a pen. I thought it was in real time initially as well, and then when I saw it again a few times, it just kind of confirmed to me that I felt that it was. I'd have been screaming for it, that's for sure, if I'd been Alexander Blessing. But yeah, he was as usual, animated himself on the touchline. On the other hand, Anderlecht were wretched, I thought. Really poor stuff. Not a lot happening there at all. They were much better in the second half, I thought. The intensity and the aggression that you were kind of looking for was there, but nobody was connecting. The midfield looked pretty dysfunctional. Arnstad, Diawara, Nashimiro, not really clicking at all in the middle, and the gap between them and kind of Dolberg up front, just in terms of service and space, was just a bit horrible. And he just looked a pretty forlorn figure. He got into a couple of good spots, Dolberg, actually, but just it wasn't happening for them. Dupe, worth highlighting him, maybe for negative reasons. As Ben was saying, he came flying out for a couple of crosses on corners and was absolutely miles off them. So he's going to be entertaining to watch, if nothing else, if he's planning on coming for all the corners this season. But yeah, loads of room for improvement for Anderlecht. They look well off it at the moment. They are going to bring in more. We know that, and there's still a sort of month to go before the window closes, so there's absolutely no need for them to panic yet. But that performance level was really, really poor, and I'm sure that was kind of conveyed to them by Brian Reimer afterwards. Worth mentioning as well, it's about the marathon, not the sprint, of course. Sorry to use the cliche, but they will hope to do better at home this coming weekend.
Yeah, just I guess you guys said a lot of things already. The easy to say that as well, that the reinforcement that they have made at Anderlecht did not really perform in this game. Like Patrice got that first goal, that's not a good intervention, or positioning for sure. Dolberg, yeah, that he had one big chance, he missed it in a silly way as well, and it could have been crucial as to Dupé, as you said already. Both of you said like not completely convincing at times, not reassuring his defense. Yeah, and also they got their first shot on after 38 minutes or something like that, if I'm not mistaken, and their first shot on target around the 85th minute, I believe, even. So yeah, that actually in itself says everything. How their evening went. Union being denied by the woodwork twice in the opening half as well. First half they were really good. Second one they were consolidating. Difficult to really judge them on this game. I still find it a very ridiculous penalty, even if it would have hit the elbow, which I'm still not convinced about, because you can't judge that on a still image. Then that's been the proof in the media now. But okay, that's another topic. The theoretical good point about that is at least that it's most likely would not have changed the outcome of the game, as it was already in injury time. But yeah, difficult to say that as well. But poor performance from Anderlecht, good, decent one, good start for Alexander Blessing at Union, despite all the players they have lost. And yeah, like I said, on Union side, I guess still a bit difficult to judge, but good that they won and that they got a clean sheet as well. So it's off to a good start.
Yeah, they absolutely love playing Anderlecht as well, don't they? Union just continue to pile on misery whenever they face them.
Yep, it's now instead of the 7-0 that's been it has been said, like it's actually 6-0, 1-0 now in the tennis terms. Of course, that also have been used, but not consistently. So just gotta put that out as well.
I'm sure Anderlecht fans would love to hear that. Yeah, I think on Dolberg, saying to you guys, yeah, as we've been saying, I think he needs to score within the next couple of games to really get some confidence back. Even just get one off your knee, just bundle one in. Who cares how you get one? But I think he desperately needs that. Speaking of goal scorers, when we looked at Eupen last week, obviously with their new striker Bielek injured, we're like, well, who's going to score the goals? And how do we miss Jentel van Genechten, guys? It was so obvious that he was going to be their star goal, the guy that's going to grab the goals. So they faced Westerlo at home in the first game under Florian Kerfeld at the Keerweg Stadion, and yeah, got off to a good start for them. Sinan Bolat pushed the ball straight to Van Ganechten, who tapped it in the 20th minute to make it 1-0. Warning signs, though, for Erpen were evident. Lennart Merzer, who we spoke about in the preview, I was quite bullish in saying I think he's a decent goalkeeper. He was on the bench. Nuruddin was back in goal, and I have a soft spot for Nuruddin ever since that game where he played against Club Brugge, where he was actually completely unbelievable, just making some fantastic saves. But he looked sketchy. He looked really sketchy. Like Dupe, crosses were just an absolute kryptonite for him. He could not judge them. And to be fair to Veslo, all their balls in were like kind of swinging away from the keeper. They're fantastic crosses. They just couldn't make the most of them and stick them in the back of the net. But they had plenty of chances with him bouncing into his defenders. New man Victor Paulsen coming straight into the starting lineup as well for Erpen, so there's a little bit of bedding in to do there. But yeah, it didn't look great for Nuruddin, but it looked like they were going to get away with it after 55 minutes. Van den Bay with a ridiculously good strike from the edge of the box. That hits the post. Van Ganechten's there, though, isn't he? He taps it in. Well, tap is probably a little bit of an understatement. It's a really nice finish to control it and put it in the back of the net. He looked absolutely baffled as to how he'd got himself a brace. So fair play to him for doing that. Slight concern for Erpen with Kevin Mervald, one of their big signing, basically in the window, going off at half time. I haven't seen an update on whether what that was for, but their bench was looking quite weak. Duroc obviously then just emptied his bench. Newman Matija Frugan came on. Lucas Stassen came on. Kian Vassen came on. Lucas Vanino, Jan Burnett. He just started chucking all these players on. But that man Nuruddin helped them get back in the game when he completely wiped out Matthias Fixels in the box. It took a while for them to give the penalty and then with VAR as well, but it was pretty obviously a penalty, even though Fixels pushes the ball back into a place where he probably was never going to get it, but Nuruddin just completely takes him out. Upstet, Nicholas Madsen, obviously no Maxime de Kuiper to take penalties this season for Westerlo. He puts it into the bottom corner. Nuruddin, who has history of saving penalties for Ghana in one of those random tournaments they play where they face Japan or someone like that. He gets us the right way, to be fair, but he just can't get there. Then it's just all Westerlo. Erpen didn't really have kind of the outball to get the chances that they needed to kill the game off. Game's running down. We get into added time. It's I think there's a corner comes in. Westerlo header, which is going wide. Nuruddin goes to save it, which wouldn't have been an issue if he'd just either pushed it out or caught it. But for some reason, he's beyond the goal and just pushes it straight back into within the frame of the upright, where Lucas Stassen on his Westerlo debut is like, thank you very much, I'll stick that in the back of the net. Just an awful performance from the goalkeeper. It just looks sketchy at the back for Erpen all afternoon. And I hate to kind of rag on the guy because I've wanted him to play, I've wanted him to be kind of given the opportunities, but I think after this performance, Kerfeld's going to be kind of scratching his head and hopefully putting Merzer back in, or Mozer's off, finding a new goalkeeper, because a performance like that has completely cost Erpen, hasn't it, Joris? And you think they're a side that we think are going to be in a relegation battle. Those two drop points could be absolutely crucial by the end of the season. I know that's kind of a big thing to say after one game, but we see it happen all the time.
Yeah, obviously, and then additionally, with that being the only playoffs in the first division where there's no points halving, so here these points actually could be very crucial for sure, as we would imagine Erpen being in that or around that at least playoff. So if they are not in that, of course, that's a bit less of an argument, but I think everyone expects them to be at least in a fight for these playoffs. On the other hand, the upper side for them is then maybe we were talking about their lack of striker this weekend, and now they have the top scorer in Van Genechten with 2 goals in true poaching style as well, and really nice finishes at that. Even though, of course, indeed at least at the first goal, he got some help from Bolat there, but still a good finish to take it on like that. But yeah, That's especially must have felt either very sweet or very sour. I do not know how they feel about his former club, but he spent a big part of his youth career in Westerlo, so at Westerlo as well. So yeah, that's an additional element to that as well. You already talked about Nuruddin costing them. I guess I do not have to repeat that too much. There are rumors. Now we understand them a bit more. Maybe last week some rumors came out of the American Chelsea goalkeeper. Was it Solina, or how is his name? Anyway, linked to them. Yeah, maybe that could be a good solution for them after an early conclusion after one game, of course. But there we go. From Westerlo's point of view, I found Frigan's entrance in the Pro League actually a quite good one, even though he didn't score. I felt like he showed quite some good things on his debut, some flashes. Yeah, but for Westerlo in general, they had a lot of shots, but in the end, they actually had less shots on target than open, so they lacked a bit of firing power ultimately, though. Even actually, this eventual equalizer, came after a shot that was not on target initially, of course. So also, these were the first away goals. This is not so important, I guess, but the first away goals of the season were made by Westerlo as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot I can add to what the guy said there. I'm quite a big fan of Jentel van Genechten, actually. I actually think he's a pretty decent young player, so it was nice to see him doing very, very well, actually, this weekend. A couple of half chances, taking full advantage of them. Odd game slightly this, I kind of felt. Eupen noticeably sitting quite deep, playing quite a low block for a lot of the game. And, we've talked about the lack of depth in their squad, which remains a worry. And they're one of the sides who really need to bring in quite a few to give themselves, a real chance of not being in a scrap, which I think they will be kind of regardless. Started quite brightly, managed to get a 2-goal lead, and then partly because of tactical reasons, I felt anyway in watching the game, just sitting deeper than they needed to, inviting the pressure actually. And I think from a Westerlo perspective, they'll probably be slightly frustrated they didn't win this in the end, because although they managed to get away with a point, they could have quite easily won this if, that magic word we use a lot here at the BFP, efficiency, had been, a bit more on point, then they probably would have got the points in this case, because I felt they were much the better side, and thought when I was watching it that they might yet get it over the line. They didn't quite, but yeah, I mean those things that worry us about Eupen were kind of there all to see, really, and I don't think they can afford to play low blocks like they did in this opening weekend. I understand that. Why they would go into a game like this doing that, but I thought really you would do that at home, which is going to be where I suspect they're going to get most of their points as well. So that was a little bit concerning for me, I thought, and just kind of signalled a slightly negative mindset when they didn't need to approach that game in that way. So that was interesting for me. But yeah, I mean, the sides that we've highlighted already this season has been ones that we think are going to be in real trouble. Didn't have a bad weekend all in all, and that's one of the amusing takeaways for me.
Yeah, you mentioned that kind of like that low block there, Scott, and just kind of picking up on that. I think as well, like the problem they have is with Isaac Nuhu and Reagan Charles Cook, like good players, but they're not going to hold the ball up. They're not going to always. Like I always think of Charles Cook as more as kind of a guy that wants to operate just in behind a striker who's more of a target man, which Nuhu obviously isn't. And you kind of saw it on the other side with Vesta as well. Like Matsura and Daki, I thought it was a weird kind of strike partnership to go with. And like Joris said about Frigan, I think he's going to start quite soon because he looks more like an out-and-out striker. Where those two guys are kind of like Daki's a bit like a Charles Cook, and Matsura is kind of more of a winger, in my opinion, than a striker he's looked a bit like. So I think there's that strike force. We'll probably see a different one as well in Frigan and Stassen eventually. But to be fair, like if you're a person that enjoys watching young emerging talent and looking for kind of like the next young players, like Westerlo are a team to watch this season, aren't they? They have so many young players that are really, really interesting.
Hey, actually, since we're talking about Westerlo, Ben, there, one of the things that amazed me this week was, and I don't know how I missed this, I came across this by chance when I was actually researching something else. Westerlo are the second highest spenders this summer, so far anyway, and that slightly flabbergasted me. Worth bringing up, I thought.
Yeah, it's all that Lyle Foster money, isn't it? They've been able to just kind of like reinvest it and probably bring in players that eventually they'll be able to sell for more. Like if Frigan comes off, like he was linked with some other clubs that would have been able to pay that money as well. So they're an interesting side, and I think like the opinion on them has shifted quite a bit in terms of where they're going to finish. In the sense that was a bit concerned, now less concerned if some of these players can come off. Let's go to Charleroi against Leuven, which I don't know about you guys, but it gave me kind of flashbacks to COVID times of watching a game behind closed doors. It was very depressing, and you realise that without the crowd, it now again is so hard to watch football. It's quite horrible, to be honest. Like, very echoey. Although, yeah, while I was watching it, my wife did come in and asked like, "Who's Nathan?" And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Who's the guy that keeps shouting Nathan?" I think it was Mark Bryce shouting at Nathan Opoku throughout the game. So it's one of those ones that you can hear all that. So yeah, she now knows a couple of footballers more than she did before. Nathan Opoku's one of them, which is quite niche. But it was the striker on the other side who had the first say in this match. Ode de Bag, the Palestinian striker on his first game for the club, he got them off to a great start in the 10th or 9th minute with a tapping at the back post after a nice cross. I think it was from Mbenza, if I'm not mistaken. Flicked onto the back post, he taps it in to make it 1-0. Charleroi then kind of throw it away when his strike partner, Nikola Stulic, gets himself sent off in the 17th minute. And after that, Leuven have kind of all the ball and all the chances. They finished with 68% possession, 19 shots, just 5 on target. And they just couldn't find anything in that first half. Martins was on the bench, Koda Nadri was on the bench, and he's starting Natural and Singi as well. They weren't Opoku, Vletings, and Paul Steinson. And again, I feel like I said this last year, but I still don't get what Vletings brings to the team. I just feel like in that sort of game, Ndri's better, and Singi's better. Like, get these exciting players on, which he did do. Half-time, Ndri straight on, Mertens straight on. But they still struggled to find a way through Charleroi until in the 83rd minute they got a penalty. Up steps Nathan Opoku, finishes it quite well to make it 1-1, but Leuven can't find anything more than that. So a stuttering start for them. I'm sure Bryce will be frustrated, not just in the sense that they couldn't win, but also with kind of the state of the side. And he he'll want another striker before the window closes. But at least the one he did have, Opoku scored. And yeah, 1-1, it finished there. Scott, go to you first on this one. What are your kind of initial impressions on, I guess it's hard to judge Charleroi, they were down to 10 men, but Leuven with a man advantage.
I thought Charleroi actually looked quite good, Ben. I felt, they looked like a side who could score most of the time they went forward in this game. And in the spirit of sides that look close to being kind of ready in terms of, the level of intensity you would want in competitive matches, I saw that in them for most of the game. Didn't really see it in Leuven. Plenty of work still for them to do there. Daba having, it's my first kind of close look at him actually, and he did impress me. I think he's going to score a few for them this season, which is just as well because it's one of the reasons that they brought him in. And I suspect he could do kind of quite well in this side. Stulic getting sent off, I think, kind of derailed them slightly. They started very, very brightly and aggressively, Charleroi, and after that, I think it's that psychological thing. I think where players started to withdraw into themselves a little bit, and you could see them falling just that little bit deeper as a result of that. Obviously, there's tactical tweaks as well that come into play here, but Charleroi on the whole looked pretty decent, I felt, and I think they're I said in the pre-season preview that I think, partly because of the Felix Mazu factor, but I think their squad's in a reasonable place. Probably does need another creative midfielder. The likes of Morioka, who's very much on the fringes now, high probability he's going to leave. They just haven't been able to close any deals. There were a couple of clubs really quite interested in him. Kortrijk were interested in taking him as well, but they couldn't agree wages. So it'll be interesting to see where he does end up, or whether he stays on until January. That's one to kind of keep an eye on. Leuven, on the other hand, this was a great example of having the vast majority of the possession, but doing absolutely bugger all with it, to be honest. Really, really struggled, a bit like Anderlecht, and, just kind of couldn't connect. There was very little connection at all, no efficiency. Creatively speaking, they were really very poor. Ben highlighted the need for another striker just in the last couple of days. Leuven have obviously been in contact with Antwerp, and Antwerp had offered Michael Frey in a part exchange deal for Mandy Keita, who obviously was at Antwerp last season on loan, and that seemed to be set up and an agreement in place until Michael Frey decided, no, I don't want to go to Leuven, which from a Leuven perspective actually probably would have been quite a decent signing, actually, because he's proven himself over the last little while, Michael Frey, to be a pretty reliable striker at the Pro League level, but he seems to want to leave Belgian football. That seems to be his priority. But yeah, I felt that Leuven struggled despite having a lot of the ball and not really doing anything with it. And Mark Bryce was quite right, I thought, to look quite frustrated on the touchline.
Yeah, from Leuven's point of view, not that many positives outside of maybe getting away with a point at least. There can't really comment too much on them, I suppose, anymore. They had a lot of sterile pressure. They got lucky with getting that penalty as well. What else is there to mention from their side? I only wanted to highlight again that Keegan. I won't do it all season long, but for now I'm a bit in the amazement mode, not in a good kind of it, that he's actually featuring in games now as well straight away.
Me too. I second that.
But okay, what else? Oh yeah, and also the good statistic for them that they have got going against Charleroi. They haven't lost a single one of their last 6 games, so also the last 3 seasons against Charleroi. I believe it doesn't matter too much, but I think it's 3 wins and 3 draws. In Charleroi, on the other hand, yeah, they went for the first, I believe if I'm not mistaken, I will put that disclaimer, but I'm quite sure about it. It was the first Palestinian goal in the Pro League so far as well. I think he was Dawar is also actually only the second Palestinian player to feature in the Pro League and also at Charleroi. Coincidentally, I believe there was one player, I forgot his name, but that featured me in total 30 minutes across 2 games or something around 15 years ago. And also they got their first red card with that silly challenge from Stulic. I think that decision was a correct one, but definitely they might, without that moment, it looks like they might have won this game, so they will be kicking their heads a bit, that's things happen, I guess. And for once I enjoyed it again to hear managers scream and actually hear what they were saying, and hear that what they're basically not saying that much actually as well, but or nothing sophisticated in such games. Naturally, of course, it's a simple game, football in all that we love to talk about, but it is what it is. And yeah, I'd rather not see it too often this season anymore. Like with COVID, I can understand. Yeah, that's a very valid reason for it, but let's hope there's no other reasons for empty stadiums again.
Yeah, no, definitely. Frustrating start for Charleroi and Leuven, kind of, I guess, in that one. Not so frustrating for Genk when they travelled to Brussels to face Molenbeek, who've obviously had the most ridiculous pre-season. But now it was time for them to finally get onto the pitch. And yeah, Genk were just ready for them. Ali Federa, after half an hour, gave them a 1-0 lead. Ryan Hennon then converted a penalty to make it 2, and just before half-time, Daniel Munoz headed in from a corner to make it 3-0. Carlos Cuesta then made it 4 from another corner in the 71st minute. Genk were able to rest a ton of players, a bit of rotation. Vazovsky on the bench, El Canus on the bench, Tressor on the bench, Tolu also on the bench. Joris, obviously, we got to go to you first on this one, but you were a bit concerned about Urisaw as a striker. But I guess when you're playing a team like Molenbeek, you kind of never know with a side that's had this weird kind of pre-season. Will they just come out completely fighting and really take it to Genk, or will they kind of crumble? But in the end, you guys got the win, even without a recognised striker on the pitch. But obviously, that's not something that what you want to happen continuously. But it's always nice to start with a 4-0 win on the first game of the season.
Yeah, exactly. Well, already on Molenbeek, I feel like they did something in the middle of those things I mentioned. They didn't really crumble. They did give it a good go to a certain extent. I was also still very worried about the defense, but okay, I'll first talk a bit about Sor, I guess. Well, actually, not that much to say. I had a regular game, I guess, nothing too shabby either. So didn't completely get my doubts away too much, but given the results and given his performance, like he didn't give me more doubts either. So decent performance, and when you go with the 4-0 win anyway, anything else matters less, especially if there's also no injuries or guards on this side. Indeed, well, yeah, I'm still, like I said, I'm a bit worried about defense still. That they gave away a lot at 0-0, and even when they were 1-0 up, I believe Molenbeek could have converted there on the scarce moments they had on the counter. I think we're never really going to lose this game. The attacking force was strong enough. I'm also applauding the rotation in a way, just to keep players happy. It's also necessary. And to be honest, with all due respect, this is indeed a game where you can try it without having too much worries about losing, dropping any points. But and it also worked out like that. Galarza had a good game, I felt, on his the starting 11 debut after 1 year, so long awaited one as well. But not can't really make up much conclusions out of the game from both sides. Maybe even 3 points in the back for Genk, for Molenbeek. Unexpected loss, especially given circumstances with the managerial crisis, and so on, that came to them that last week. So couldn't really expect much from them. Biron had a good game for them, I felt, or at least a good first half. Mercier, actually, you could see he's still not fit, and you know that from the three of us, I'm the least impressed with him, but he did show that if there is one player that could help them a bit up the table later on, it's definitely going to be him in combination with Byron. How I want to pronounce it, I don't know yet, but they definitely are key to the success, potential success, together maybe with the newly acquired Maktar Gay, of course, as well. And Eluadi also had a good game from their side. Just want to highlight that. For Genk, really not that much to say. Initially, still strong on set pieces, even if Tresor was not too involved with them. That's maybe the main reassuring point as well. Like after already scoring in the European game last week on a set piece, this weekend against Molenbeek, they also scored twice, where at least Tresor was not the final assist giver. I think he was involved with the fourth goal from Cuesta, but that was a short corner, and the cross came from Paintsel, who had a few assists as well. So a good start of the season for him, even though he also made a few wrong choices, like we're a bit more used to from the past of him. So I hope that that's not going to happen to us. But cruise control win, I guess. And a clean sheet. I'm always happy with a clean sheet and an away win. That both these things did not happen that often at the back end of last season.
Yep, quality analysis, as ever, from our resident in-house BFP Genki. Quality generally rises to the top, and I think that's what we saw in this game. It was interesting when I was watching it, kind of one of the things I took away from it was the fact that I think Molenbeek looked 2 or 3 steps behind Genk. In terms of their speed of thought, basically, you could see, okay, this is a side that are maybe going to take a few weeks to adjust to this level, albeit they're playing one of the top Pro League sides in their opening game, which obviously doesn't help. But I think it's going to take Molenbeek, maybe 3 or 4 weeks to kind of get used to this level. So in some regards, this game was a bit of a free hit for them. But I thought the Genk performance was arguably team performance of the weekend. I thought they were generally looking really good. Which isn't a surprise, with the quality and depth in that squad that we've talked about. And, Joris was talking about the rotation, which I know was a bit of a worry for him kind of before the game. No signs of that at all. Everybody looked kind of quite hungry to me, which is very encouraging. And Wouter Rankin looked noticeably relaxed throughout pretty much the entire 90 minutes. One of the positives, obviously, from Molenbeek is they were better in the second half. I thought they held on to the ball a bit better, and their use of the ball and distribution was a little bit more positive. So they kind of gathered themselves, reasonably well. But of course, the game was already gone completely by that point. Another positive for them, I suppose, is since this result this weekend, they've brought in 3 new faces as well. So that gives a new T1, Claudio Cacapa, some nice selection problems ahead of, I think it's Leuven they play this weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is. Away
Yep.
from home. Yeah, I think to be fair to Molenbeek, we're not going to judge their season on their results against Genk. That's just not the teams that they're going to be competing with this season. So it's kind of like a welcome to the Pro League, now settle in. Sides like Leuven, you'd think that's kind of where they're going to need to be picking up points if they want to avoid finishing in the bottom 4. One side that will probably want to be going toe-to-toe with Genk at the top of the table are Antwerp, obviously last year's champions. They had a tricky first game of the season against Cercle Bruges. Obviously no Ueda for Circle. He's off to Feyenoord, I believe it is, for around about €9 million. So another tidy profit made by the Circle boys. So instead it was Mr. Denki and Gaboho up front for them. Unfortunately, Edgars Utkes had to come off with an injury. That's another injury Utkes has suffered. It's a real frustrating kind of time for the young Lithuanian defender / midfielder, and we wish him all the best and hope it's a quick recovery from this one. But I think it's going to be another couple of weeks, which is super frustrating because when he has played, he's looked like he's got some potential. However, it was a new man on the other side who made the difference for Antwerp. Ball over the top to an on-rushing Jakub Ondrejka, the Swedish international, very young Swedish international. He races through, tries to square it for someone else as Vardason runs out to stop him. Unfortunately for him, there's no other Antwerp players there, but fortunately for him, Jesper Darland is just at full stretch to try and clear it and sticks it into his own net. Really unfortunate own goal from Darland, and that was it. That's the only kind of deciding factor between the two sides. Circle struggled to get any shots on target, just one in the whole game. Antwerp had about 15 shots, but only 4 of those were on target, and they had the majority of the possession as well. For Antwerp, it's nice to start with a win. Circle are obviously a tricky side. One of the sides that when you look at it on paper in terms of the side they stick out, they're pretty much the same team as last year, so they're ready. And to be fair to Antwerp, it's pretty much the same on their side. So this was kind of a battle between two sides that know each other from last year as well, got some of that familiarity, both ready to go, which probably explains why it was a close, cagier game than we saw elsewhere.
Yeah, in truth, there wasn't really a great deal in it in this game, and I didn't think there would be because of the physicality that Cercle were going to bring to it. We talked a lot last season about Antwerp's physicality and their power across the pitch. And, I was aware kind of going into this game this weekend that this would be close for that reason. That power coming up against the physicality and the press of Circle tactically was going to make for kind of quite an interesting game. And Circle gave a pretty good account of themselves, I think, and were pretty up for this game. They forced a lot of early errors in Antwerp, and were kind of unlucky. I felt not probably to go ahead on a couple of occasions. They couldn't quite manage to be clinical enough when they got into those key positions, in winning transitions in the final third. But for much of this game, they looked pretty decent. Miro Muslic, Circle's T1, of course, very amusing in his press conference ahead of this game. Was very complimentary about Antwerp obviously being the triple champions, as he referred to them in his press conference, obviously being league champions, cup winners, and winning the Super Cup recently as well for the first time. Been very complimentary about that, and he said, make no mistake, after the hugs, we're going to get stuck in, which I thought was, really, really, really nice. Always has a good press conference, and Big Miron, very good with the media now. But yeah, a very tight game, and I think Antwerp will actually be really quite pleased to get away with the points in the end, because Cercle are a difficult side to play against. And if any side perhaps has the profile to maybe take some points off Antwerp these days, it is a side like Cercle. And in many ways, from a Cercle perspective, this is an ideal league opener as well. You don't really want to have a slow start. So I suspect in many ways, Miro Muslic and his staff will probably have been secretly quite pleased that this was their opening fixture, because it demands that you start at a certain level, and the expectation levels at Circle in terms of performance are actually kind of quite high from a physical point of view, as we know. So in many ways, this was an absolute ideal start for them. They'll just be slightly disappointed that they couldn't get anything out of the game in the end.
Yes, I suppose so. But the one thing I want to say about Circle as well, which makes it a bit more difficult to win games, is that they did not have many shots on targets. Actually, only one. There was also a header from Somers in the second half, I believe, but I think that didn't count in the end because there was a whistle for a foul or an offside before in the end. But yeah, that one was a big chance for Dinky in the beginning, of course, when it was still 0-0. That could have completely changed the course of the game. But in the end, it was a casual victory. Like we got a bit used to that one style of victories from Antwerp. I suppose just a good clean sheet, and yeah, sadly maybe not too flashy, but enough to get it over the line. It's also from Circus' perspective a bit sad that this is the second time in a row that they lose 1-0 or with one goal difference at least against Antwerp through two own goals from their defenders. But okay, this one was a bit less clumsy than the one that Popovic had in April. And yeah, that was a clumsy one. This one, he had to do something, I guess. And yeah, he got a bit unlucky with that touch, even though he did not really have a great game overall. But yeah, that's apart from that specific phase. Yeah, on Antwerp, yeah, like I said, not that much to say, nothing too flashy, but a good win for Cercle. Yeah, there was just a bit like, well, technically there was a lot of space, which will happen with teams who play a high press behind the defense in the corners, and yeah, that Antwerp exploited that really well in this game as well. A lot, especially the space that I was behind Sike. That's nothing against the player; it's a bit of part of the system. So either that's tactically really good from Antwerp, or that's a point where Cercle as on a whole should have to work on. But I think it's something they have to take with this style of play anyway. But yeah, that was quite remarkable. So even in the end, also the goal comes from there. But even before that, there were quite some phases where, yeah, the Antwerp played the ball really well in behind Sike on the right side, and yeah, they managed to create some dangerous situations out of that. Yeah, all in all, both AGs were underneath 1, so Antwerp had 0.84 and Cercle 0.66. Yeah, that's quite even. It was quite an even game. Cercle gave a good go, but in the end, well, I suppose a deserved victory for Antwerp. And yeah, also I guess it was really important who scored first in this game as well. And yeah, that was Antwerp.
Yeah, it certainly was, and their title defense is up and running. And yeah, interesting what you said, Joris, about kind of like that exploiting the space and stuff like that. And it's just that classic case of, as a coach, you have to take that decision, don't you? Of, do you adapt your style of play to kind of counteract your opponents, or do you think, no, we're going to play our way and hope that they have to then adjust to counter us? So yeah, I guess the early season is where you kind of say we're just going to play our way and see what happens, because like it shouldn't matter in the long run. New coach in the dugout for Kortrijk as they travel to Ghent. Obviously, Ed Still is the new man there. Eyebrows raised, I guess you could say, with his first team sheet with Montegnies, the 17-year-old, I believe he's 17 years old, kid just into midfield, who, from what I've read, doesn't even have a like pro contract with the side yet. But he was shoved straight into central midfield for their game at Ghent, and it got off to a good start for Kortrijk. The side we all expect to struggle, but if there's one player that has the quality to keep them up, it is Kadri. And as the new captain, he got them going with a lovely finish in the 5th minute after a nice 1-2 on the edge of the box. It lasted about 3 minutes before poor Alexander Radovanovic, who was deemed surplus to requirements last year, was going to be let go. They loaned him out, I think it was to the States, wasn't it? But he's now back and they kind of need him to play. But he had a terrible own goal. Awful own goal from him. Poor old Tom Vandenberg had kind of no chance with that one. That made it 1 apiece. Hugo Kuipers then scored from a corner. He was sporting the old sock on the head injury thing, but that didn't stop his header going into the back of the net. Gift Orban then scored on the counter-attack to make it 3-1 for Ghent. But then Felipe Avenatti with a really nice header in the 88th minute gave them a little bit of cause for concern, but they did see that one out. Still, after the game, was pretty happy, as you can imagine, with his side's kind of performance and the fact that they scored some goals and gave as good as they got from Ghent. Also said that the kid Montigny's is kind of, he's impressed him in pre-season and he deserved the chance to play there. And he said if he keeps impressing, he's going to keep playing no matter his age. So that's the nice kind of one to see as it evolves over the coming season. Joris, go to you first on this one. Were you impressed with what you saw from Kortrijk, considering that we expected them to really, really struggle? And yeah, your opinion on Ghent as well, with obviously Kuipers and Orban getting on the score sheet.
Impressed is maybe a bit too positive about it, but they did indeed show a bit more than I expected in this first game, as I did not think they would be as ready as they were, especially in the first minutes of the game. They really took the game into hand and scored deservedly as well. But yeah, that's good for them indeed. Montigny getting his debut, like you mentioned, 17-year-old. Also, De Koele getting his debut on as a sub later on in the game. That's all another part to say about Kortrijk. Then also that the defense on Orban's goal, I can't get over it. It was so clear that ball was going to be played and that needed to be that he needed to be put offside. I believe it was by Joao Silva who kept him onside. But okay, that's I found that honking defending, like our Scott would say. And the finish itself was great, of course, but and then like the way Kent played it as well. That it was how it needed to be done, but it was a bit too easy to my liking. But Kuiper scoring like with his the band-aid against around his head. Yeah, that's that was also an interesting one. Maybe that's a bit of cheating. He might have scored with it with an additional instrument, but okay, I guess that's a dead object, so to say. And in the game, I don't know if that might have been a too literal translation, but like the corner flag, an element of the game that is allowed that can influence things that unexpectedly. For it's still the first time he loses his first game at his new team. So that's the negative statistic on the first. For Ghent, there was a positive first in winning their first, not in history first, but the first time in 12 years that they got the win on their opening day game. So that's. I'm sure they will be pleased with that, and also that they will have been a little bit scared with that late consolation goal in the end from Avenatti. Now we can say consolation goal, but on that point, it really brought Kortrijk back into the game, and a little bit of a scare for Ghent there. That the deserved win for Ghent all in all, but Kortrijk played decent more. Like I like to say, I'll try to ban this word out of my vocabulary, but so far I'll keep it at decent, which is better than I and I believe all of us expected on the opening day for them.
Yeah, Ed Still's been talking a lot recently about how he wants to try and surprise people this season, which, to be fair, I think he's going to have to do because we've highlighted them as being a side that we're quite worried about. But the plan on Ed Still's part, obviously, is he was describing what he wants, and the words he was using that I took away from it was a young and dynamic side. Which is something that Cercle Bruges have really developed and seems to be working very well as the model for them. So he wants a young and dynamic side. And when you have a look at the side that he actually put out there, you have Dion Deneuve, who's obviously still developing. He's 22. Martin Wasinski's back on loan. He's still only 19. João Silva, a little bit older, at kind of 24. Mbayo's 21. Misato's 20. So this is a young side. So to go to the Gemelco and take on the Buffaloes and for the most part be quite bright. They started much the better side. Kortrijk scored a lovely goal actually, and then in true hilarious footballing style, threw it all away with an equally hilarious own goal. In terms of its quality, and within only kind of 3 minutes, I think Ghent's quality kind of allowed them to get a grip of the game, much later on, and kind of turn it around really. And when you've got firepower like Kuipers and Orban on the pitch, then you can afford to go behind in a game in truth and still turn it around. Decent stuff for them. Big Ein will be, I think, reasonably happy with that. As he should. And Joris is right to highlight this is the first time since 2012, that they get the opening day win, which, while in itself is not significant, is one of those stats that kind of surprised me when when we were discussing that the other day. So big thing to look out for, of course. Still a long time with the window open, still a month, as we were saying earlier. One of the big questions is, will Gift Orban still be there? Because obviously there's lots of interest in him at the moment. A couple of big French clubs openly interested in him, and Tottenham have made recent contact with his entourage as well, because we know there's an ongoing situation there regarding Harry Kane and will he or won't he leave. Tottenham obviously have identified Gift Orban as a potential replacement for Harry Kane.
Yeah, we're interested to see how long Orban stays for this window. But yeah, again, like that stat kind of says, doesn't it? They have been slow starters in the league. So I guess for Hein and the fans, it's like, finally, let's start with a little bit more momentum this season than last. Kortrijk, obviously, they did have just brought in a new left back, Romanian international left back. I can't quite remember his name, but they also brought in a striker from Cardiff City. I think it's Isaac Davis, 21-year-old striker. So yeah, interesting to see how he kind of settles in. Yeah, let's see what happens there. Let's go to Bruges, another side that wanted to get off to a good start. Under new man Ronnie Dyler, they were up against KV Mechelen. obviously under Stephen Defour, Leon Lauberbach leading the line for them, Thiago leading the line for Club Bruges, but Lesson on the bench to start this one, and a couple of the other new guys on the bench as well. Maxime de Kuiper getting the start over Bjorn Meyer at left back as well, so that's an interesting one, although but because of how things transpired in this one, it looks like Meyer will be back in for the next game. Lots of chances for Club Bruges, but it was actually Mechelen that took the lead. Rob Scouse with a fantastic goal in the 38th minute to give them a 1-0 lead. 21 shots for Bruges at the end, 5 on target. And I think they were fortunate with their chance to get back into the game when they were ordered a penalty for in kind of those little two-finger hyphen marks, a foul on Thiago. I think he's already going down, in my opinion. It's really, really soft. And I can see why the referee didn't give it initially, because it just looks like it's just got kind of like a tangle of legs, if you know what I mean. But he's already going down, so it doesn't really make him go down. It doesn't like affect him from getting the ball or anything like that. So really, really soft. But he steps up, and his penalty is fantastic, to be fair. Absolutely smashes it past Gaetan Kook. And then it's all Club, but Mechelen are having these chances on the break. They just don't really seem to have the pace of an outball until in the 76th minute they finally are breaking. I think it must have been like a 3-on-1 at this point. Lauerbach, he's got to find a pass to one of the two wide players. Instead takes an extra touch and then just gets taken out by Maxime de Kuiper. He's shown his second yellow, which then leads to this farcical situation where VAR has to intervene and the referee has to go to the monitor to then just give him a straight red. But then he doesn't give him a straight red. He just sticks with the second yellow. It was just the most pointless passage of play ever. And it was just a complete waste of everyone's time. I think Joris, you said to us in our little WhatsApp chat, you're like, why don't they just tell him to make a decision? Why do they need to go to the bench anyway? Like, it was just all a bit stupid, to be honest. I think it probably should have been a straight red because he was the last man and they were through on goal. So it was either Lauerbach was going through or the player that the ball he was actually going to pass the ball to was going through. Club go down to 10 men. Mechelen can't then find a winner anyway, but they come out of Bruges with a point. Disappointing start for Club, Scott. Not the one they would have expected. I think there were some missed opportunities. I think there was a couple of times Thiago was too selfish. He could have played the ball to any one of number of players running down on the flanks, but he didn't. So it's some kind of easing in, I guess, that's going to happen there. They've got Zinkernagel coming in, so he'll bring a different dynamic, but they've now got quite a few of those kind of players that don't want to defend, but will play in a more attacking position. So interesting to see kind of how Dyler gets it all in. But I guess as a Mechelen fan, you probably, if you'd been offered that result at the beginning of the night, you'd have probably taken that as 1-1 away at the Ambrijdel. We'll have that all day.
This was such an interesting game tactically, I thought, and a really intriguing one to watch. I felt Mechelen obviously went into this knowing that Club were going to have the majority of the possession, and Stephen Defour has set Mechelen up essentially to play a counter-attacking game here, which is always difficult. I mean, I think Mechelen, at full strength, kind of have the players who can play effectively like that. But you're also, when you go to a place like the Ambrijdel and you're the away side against Club, as I was saying, you're not going to have most of the ball probably, but you're inviting that pressure on, which is kind of odd for a side like Mechelen who generally try to play on the front foot. So I thought that was absolutely fascinating from a tactical point of view. Rob Scouse scoring, a really nice cheeky goal, setting the cat amongst the pigeons. Ronnie Dyler looked quite frustrated during a lot of this game, and Ben was talking about kind of missed opportunities, wrong choices, kind of key moments, and I just it's that thing about composure. Really, they just seem to rush certain things. I think Club. Maybe in another day, they would have scored a few here if they, just been a little bit more composed at kind of key moments. But because this was so fascinating tactically, Mechelen could quite easily have won this, had they taken the chances they created themselves, and really arguably should have, missed a couple of, really, really bad ones. One of which actually had me gasp out loud when I was watching it. So bad was it. with the one-on-one with the through ball. Bolingoli obviously going off injured. I was slightly disappointed that Belgali didn't start ahead of him, actually. But ironically, I think Bolingoli's going to be out for a few weeks now, so we're probably going to see Belgali get a few starts, which might not be a bad thing. Because he's a very exciting young player, and it'd be nice to see him get a little run. And I think at his best, Belgali is actually a better player than the more experienced Bolingoli. So it's funny the way kind of things work out. Mechelen, from their perspective, will be absolutely delighted with the point. They did look really disappointed not to have won it, because they nearly won it with a cheeky deflection right at the very death as well, that went really, really close to going in the right side of the post from their perspective. But yeah, Ronnie Deila, I think, will be just a little bit frustrated that they couldn't get the opening day win that they wanted, because they've been quite good in Europe up till now, and looked like they were getting up to a good level. I was slightly disappointed in club, and I have a feeling that Ronnie Deila doesn't quite know his best 11 yet, which is probably understandable with some of the quality at his disposal now. There are players there who I would expecting to be starting that didn't, and he did say before this game that they played so well in Europe against Aarhus that he decided to start with the same 11 that were so convincing in their game against them a few days beforehand. But perhaps he should have rotated a little bit more. But yeah, generally fascinating game, this one.
Yeah, Scott said a lot there. Belgali really had a good game. I wanted to highlight him as well. From when he came on, of course. For Club Brugge, mainly frustrating. Well, for both sides in the end, I get a bit of a frustrating game. Main point for Club Brugge, outside of the points loss, which I suppose can happen. You don't want it on your opening day, of course, especially as a manager, but it can happen. But also losing Skoff Olsen again with injury worries, that's actually a main bigger worry for them longer term. But at Mechelen, I found it interesting that they're still trying to play out from the back, and it worked quite well, to be honest. But I always had the idea like, oh, this is not going to go a whole game. It actually did not completely, but Club Brugge did not take the advantage of the situation where they actually intercepted the ball right after Koekes pass, or was it at least a dangerous pass in the defense that they intercepted and they couldn't convert on it. I guess you guys said everything else. Mainly, definitely not nice to start without a win here for Club Brugge. For Mechelen, in the end, frustrating because of the refereeing decisions there. But and also, well, I guess great goal from Schoofs, really well seen. So definitely do not want to take anything away from that. But also from a goalkeeper from Mioles quality and experience, you would expect that that his positioning would have been better, because the ball is in the end not even. That's again still not really taking away from the goal, but not really in the corner of the goal, but it's going in because of like the pace and the trajectory in general, but also because of Mioles suboptimal positioning, I guess I would say. Sour points lost for Club Brugge. A point they would have signed for before the game for Mechelen. After the game, well, I guess both teams will feel a bit frustrated. So a draw is a result that everyone in the end will have to live with, but also can live with after all.
Yeah, no, I think that sums up quite nicely. And I mean, if I'm sure he'll be fine, but if Mignonet doesn't continue for form, maybe we'll see some Nordin Jackers, who's obviously joined the side on loan as the second choice keeper for a season from Leuven. Let's go to the final game, and new manager Torsten Fink at St. Tuden. Really, I wouldn't say I was excited to watch them, but intrigued to watch this new look St. Tuden side, because obviously the Hollaback era, you knew what you were going to get from the side. They were going to be very strong defensively, but not the most exciting going forward. So I was like, is that going to change? And I was quite pleasantly surprised with what I saw. from the Canaries against Standard Liège. They looked a little bit more dynamic. They were very young, especially in the midfield. Delors Knieper making, I don't know if it's his first start, but it felt like his first start. Can't remember seeing him. Van Helden, he was on loan in the Dutch second tier, I believe it was last year. He came in to play centre-back alongside Bruno Godou, who definitely looked like the elder statesman at the back there with Smets as well. Ananu got his debut. Ito, Koita was back in. We'll have to talk him, and then Fatih Kaya leading the line. Both sides kind of feeling each other out, I guess, in this one. But in the second half, I got really impressed with St. Truden. They were creating a lot of chances, but it hasn't really changed my opinion of them, which is like if they had a striker, it'd feel a little bit different. And they just couldn't find the back of the net for some just balls across the box where you're just crying out for someone to get on the end of it and stick it in to the back of the net. Standard were quite disappointing in that sense. They looked quite vulnerable at the back, and it felt like another team would probably have punished them a lot more than St. Truden did, but they did eventually get the winner with just 4 minutes to go before the 90th minute when Abubakar Koita, who did not score at all last season, but he only seems to score screamers, and this one was another screamer from him as he cut in from the right-hand side and smashed it past Bodart into the back of the net. They managed to keep out Standard for the whole game, clean sheet, 1-0 win, massive kind of cheer from Fink and his staff at the end of the game. The team, they looked like they had a bit of togetherness and cohesion. Maybe it's because you got some of these young players that have come through the academy there kind of playing. And Joris, I think go to you first on this one, but I know that kind of the Belgian media, the kind of like the local media around the club were like, finally we're seeing some of the youngsters play, and it's kind of what they've been wanting. But then they're also like, but we could probably do with a little bit more experience to go alongside these guys as well, because it will help their development. But early signs, they were quite a nice team to watch, but I still think goal scoring wise, they're going to struggle. Whereas for Standard, it was, you could kind of feel that there was something missing, and that something missing in my mind was Steven Alzate and Philip Zinkernagel. Just that quality. And this is kind of what we said last year when Amalo or Raskin were kind of playing or not playing. You just felt that they lacked a bit of quality, and I think that kind of did show in this one.
Yep, for Standard, I actually only have one note here, which is just not good enough yet. So, that's that. I guess that sums it up. But they're not alone in that, as you could hear throughout this whole episode already. But they're definitely also one of these teams that are still a bit in construction, so to say. In the end, they could have gotten away with a draw, but maybe it was in the end a deserved win for Sint-Truiden, although both teams only had 3 shots on target as well. So also quite low XGs, also both underneath under the 1 bar. But also here I was last week again saying that I don't like the strength of these players like Koita. Well, I actually had forgotten about Koita in this summation, but Ben brought it up in our bumper preview, and then he scores his first goal in 12 months, or in 16 months or something, even April last year, I believe. In a long while, you have it in your head that he scores a few each season every time, but this time it had been a bit longer. Also because he was playing a bit less last season as well, I suppose. But really, really great goal, really good hit. And Sint-Truiden already have as many wins as they had last season after 5 games. So that's encouraging for them. Definitely, especially since they are definitely also still one of the teams that I was worried about before the season. Still I'm a bit worried, but we'll have to also to see with these Japanese players. Some of them seem to be really good prospects. I can't really judge them yet, so that's a bit of a step of in the unknown, in uncharted territory. Good win for them at least, and indeed, I believe many people are happy that there's also around these Japanese players. There are also again a few young Belgians, local players, playing to get a bit more of the identity back in their playing style as well. Let's see how that continues, because the first game of a season is always a difficult one, especially in this sense, since some of those players might not feature anymore at all when there's more reinforcements. Some of them might have gained their spot for the whole season. we'll have to see how it continues with those with the pack there. And yeah, well, good win for them and a clean sheet as well.
Yeah, I think in the case of Standard, it's a bit like the story with Anderlecht this past weekend. It's just wretched stuff for them, really, and absolutely nowhere near good enough. I'm not telling them anything that they obviously don't need to, don't already know themselves. Karl Ofkins, obviously, today in his press conference, was asked about the level of performance and did say that, you know, the club are working very hard to improve the depth and quality of what they have there. But in the meantime, he was going to continue to work hard with the current group. So he's well aware of the existing issues, and I think is just hoping that over the course of the next month that, you know, they look that little bit stronger than they do at the moment, because they're going to certainly need to perform at a much higher level week in, week out if they're going to, you know, have a reasonable season. Really disappointing from them. St Truden, on the other hand, or as I'll probably start calling them, Fink the Binks side, much like Ben, very pleasantly surprised. And one of the questions was really going to be around, you know, what we were going to get from them this season. You know, both you guys are right. I think it's too early to you know, make too many judgments on things, but there are some early indications, as Ben was saying, that we might be about to see a slightly more adventurous and expansive St Truden side, which bodes well and probably needs to happen because they don't score a lot of goals, and without, as Ben was right to highlight, you know, a recognised striker, which ironically they did have at the club last season on loan in Gianni Bruno, then, you know, they're not going to score as many as they would like, which means they've got a choice: either bring in that recognised striker, which I'm sure they're trying to do, or the side becomes more expansive in the way that it plays and takes more risks, which is what it was kind of trying to do here, certainly from what I saw of the game. And Aboubakary Koita, you know, as both you guys were saying, you know, always has a screamer in him. And, you know, if there's anybody you want to maybe have a pop in the last few minutes of a game, it's him. And that's what he did here. And probably goal of the weekend, really.
Yeah, and he's probably going to have, well, if we're just kind of like from the outside looking in, it's kind of like he's going to kind of play a bit more like he did when he played for Beveren than last season at St Truden. Like, he's obviously had to be more restricted within the Hollaback system, whereas now he's probably going to have a bit more freedom to shoot on sight, which Joris won't enjoy, but we will, as he piles them into row Z, and fans have to start taking cover. But yeah, no, I'm really intrigued to see some of these young guys for St Truden, especially the young Japanese players. They're really interesting. But I still think it's going to be a long season for them. But it could be an interesting, entertaining long season if that's possible. But yeah, pretty much agree with you guys on that. And that is every game from the weekend. Just a quick plug for our fantasy league. Yes, we are going to try and do it again this year and actually keep on top of it this year. So if you haven't joined, there's still plenty of time because I'm currently rock bottom. So probably within a week you'll have caught up with me. Thought I'd be a bit too clever, but yeah, we'll post it in the kind of show notes on the app, and you can also find it on Twitter if you're looking for it there as well. So yeah, plenty of time to get involved in that. And I think that's probably about it for this week's recording. As always, feel free to send in any questions that you have. And if you haven't already, definitely listen to our pre-season preview. I know it's a long one, but maybe split it up over a couple of days and you'll definitely get through it. It's definitely well worth a listen if we don't say so ourselves. It will kind of say what we said about all these teams. And yeah, you can kind of hear our opinions on all the different sides. We'll also be doing one for the Challenger Pro League, looking at the sides down there because their season gets underway shortly as well. And there's always a lot of interest from you guys we know in the Challenger Pro League, given some of the sides that are down there. So yeah, look out for that as well. I think that's probably about it. Joris and Scott, as always, it's been a pleasure sharing this space with you.
It absolutely has, and boy, is it good to be back. Just before we go, good luck to all our Belgian sides in European action this weekend, and have a great few days, everybody. And we'll see you quite soon, actually.
This week is what Scott means, of course, a quick lapses there, but that happens for the European football. But yeah, I can't wait to be talking again next week. When do we record again? So yeah, definitely up for the season.
Absolutely, and poor Joris has had to sit recording this while Genk are struggling to beat 10-man Servette.
I do not want to talk about this one yet.
Yeah, so hopefully by the time we've released this and we'll finish, you can go and watch them. Hopefully, win it within the last 5 minutes of added time. But by the time you hear this, you'll have known exactly what happened. But yeah, hopefully we'll have all positives there. But yeah, just before we go, if you do like what we do and the podcast we produce, please do us a review on your podcast app of choice. It obviously helps us know that we're doing a good job and helps people find us that might be interested in learning a little bit more about the crazy world of Belgian football. But as always, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Belgian Football Podcast, and we'll be back soon with another one.